You want me to talk into that?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Writers Drinking Coffee. This is a podcast based on writers sitting around drinking coffee and or wine and talking about anything and everything. We may use explicit language and will almost certainly drop F-bombs, but none of that is the point or the drive of the content, so please consider us PG-13. There will be rants and raves and occasional readings. There will be conflicting advice, creatively driven by at least 3 disparate points of view. This is episode 13, a recap of Worldcon Dublin. We have special guest Karen Brenchley, and in the background, the noise is from our web spider, David Welsh. Welcome. Karen is pointing at Chaz, but nobody can see that. Your hosts today are myself, Jeannie Warner, and Chaz Brenchley.
Okay, good.
I am deeply jealous, as I told everybody for the last few episodes, that you guys went over to Dublin, Ireland, in Worldcon.
Yes, we did.
Yes, we did.
We Dublinized.
Was it everything I dreamed?
It was even more everything you dreamed. Do you know who the first person we saw and talked to when we arrived at the hotel?
No.
Charlie Strauss.
Ah, Charlie, I miss you and I love you, and you've never met me, and I know. But remember I proposed that one time via email? So I just want to bring that up to remind you.
His wife might object.
That's what he said.
I've met his wife.
I bet she's amazing. He is my harbinger of doom.
Doom in what way?
Because he writes novels, his laundry files that have somehow turned into this future-seeing, alternative, despotic idea of how politics in the world works.
Yes, and it just is.
And it just is that way. And the more we currently get the people in power, the more Charlie needs to stop writing so we can all vote them out. I mean, I'm sorry, Charlie, I love you, but...
No. I think he is stopping writing those and doing something different.
Oh, thank God, because he was bringing about the end of the world.
Somebody may have mentioned this to him, and he's changing course as we speak.
Okay,
Can you reverse course and write about a utopia for us?
Yeah. Oh, Charlie, we could use some utopian writing.
Yeah, the trouble with utopian writing is it's always boring.
I don't know. I liked his Merchant Princess very much.
Yeah, do you think that's a utopia?
Well, it would be for me if I had a time machine.
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
Okay.
It would be awesome.
I mean, Ian Banks's culture novels are a utopia for me, and indeed for Ian. But for the most part, this is a point that I have held to for 30-odd years, that most utopian... I mean, this is why people write dystopian fiction.
It's easier.
Because it's much, much easier, because utopia tends to come out boring.
Even the planet of the happy jogging blondes from Star Trek New Generation episode, my first season, the happy jogging blonde planet where somebody stepped on the grass and was up for death.
That was Wesley, and no one minded because it was Wesley, and they were hoping. But, later on, Wesley got better.
I always loved Wesley.
We like Will Wheaton. Hi, Will.
Yes, we love Will Wheaton.
But I always liked Wesley, because he was a teenager, and I like teenage fiction.
Well, and he was a geek. He was a teenage geek.
Yeah.
And if they would just have kept writing him that way, it would have been better.
His mom was a total MILF.
Well, yeah.
Dr. Crusher, yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
The clue is in the name?
Those of us who like redheads,
Steady.
Just saying. So you walked in, you saw Charlie Strauss.
We walked in.
You didn't hug him from me, I take it. Who else? You saw Katie, I see.
We saw Katie Murphy. We saw Jeff Ryman. No, this was the thing about the way we did Worldcon, because we're best.
How did you do Worldcon?
We did Worldcon by getting a room in the hotel closest to the convention centre. And then almost never actually going to the convention centre, because we could hang out in the ground floor of our hotel was basically a lounge stroke bar stroke restaurant. And we never needed to move really, because everybody came to us.
And in the other thing, the reason we got that close thing is because I use a walker, and we discovered that you could take a cab from the front of the hotel, the 3 blocks to the convention center, and the cabbies were friendly and nice, and none of them were crazy. It's like, can we transport them to San Francisco?
Or we can just transport ourselves to Ireland. But no, it was... I mean, yeah, we could take... Karen couldn't walk. We established on the first day Karen couldn't walk that far. And we could take cabs, but it was kind of embarrassing. So I was glad that people would come to us.
Well, the thing is, we didn't go to panels. I had a whole long list of panels. The first panel I was going to go to was one by Brother Guy, who's the...
Consolmagna.
Thank you. I can't pronounce that.
I know, but I can.
Who is the Vatican's astronomer, and he was going to give this talk on science, religion, and storytelling, and I was ready to go. And they had a separate site. There was a 6-minute trolley ride away that you then had to walk miles and miles to get to the rooms and that kind of thing. And so I had other people complain about that too because it interrupted things. And then, of course, it was a busy Worldcon, so there were long lines to get into panels, just like last year. And so we hung out in the giant room full of books, okay, which I think...
Are you okay?
Yeah.
We survived. Some of the books did not. Some of the books were seized and hauled home.
That
but
happens.
not many. Not many, really.
Not many for us.
For us.
For us.
We were restrained.
Well, one of the things I like Newcom Press. Okay, I like Ian Waite's in Newcom Press, and he tends to publish my friends. Okay, which right there, just plus he's my friend.
It endears you,
Yeah, he's my friend. And we got Carrie Sperring's new novella was one of them.
Yes.
I'm of course immediately blanking on some others.
Liner notes will appear because Karen will tell me
Yes.
tomorrow, and I will put them in and write them up.
Yes, we will give you lots.
We'll give you a full list of what we bought, what
Absolutely.
we should have bought.
After all, your reading list should be entirely driven by people we talk about. So
Hell yeah!
Well, actually, for this, one of the draws was Dublin is not that far compared to Sunnyvale from Newcastle, and so quite a few of our friends from the United Kingdom were there.
And I mean, it was the lovely thing about Dublin generally is that because it was Dublin, half our American friends came over, and because it was Dublin, half our British friends came over. So we got to see an awful lot of people without really having to work very hard.
I know. And if I hadn't gone to Venice, I was going to go to Dublin, but I went to Venice.
Yeah,
Why did you go to Venice?
Because it was free.
Okay.
We don't hate you at all.
I know. Right.
Well, the thing is, also for this sounds like name dropping, but it was just kind of what happened. But one of the last dinners there, we happened to run into some of Chaz's friends, Brian Talbot and Dr. Mary Talbot, his wife, who do these fabulous illustrated novels, and they'd completed one. But he used to do all of their proofreading.
I did.
And plus, they're buds, and they said, okay, we'll have dinner. And then Chaz ran into Ginny and Ramsey Campbell, and we all had dinner. And I'm sitting there going, boy, do I feel like an insignificant speck upon the ground having dinner with these people. But they're also my friends. So that's one of the things about Worldcon is you're surrounded by these incredibly talented people whose work you've read, and they've just been names on the page. But they're just, fun people to hang out and talk to and have dinner with or have a drink with.
I found that when I bar conned and sat next to Tim Powers.
Right.
And we were
exactly.
going wildly giggling
Tim
about
is
something, and I don't
lovely.
remember what it was, but 3 or 4 drinks later, Madeline finally introduced the two of us.
Oh, that happened to me too.
I love BarCon.
So we were in a bar, and Heather Jones, who we've mentioned before and is a very good writer, who was there from America, and I was talking to her, and she was sitting next to a woman who seemed very smart and very nice, and she was wearing, from her name tag, it just said her name was Sarah, and then she got up to leave, and I went, "You're Sarah Pinsker. I love your stuff." It's been nominated for multiple Hugos the last couple of years. And she's just this nice young woman. And Heather said, you checked something off on your list, because I guess she had a list of things she wanted to happen at Worldcon, and one of them was to have someone say, "Oh my God, you're Sarah Pinsker. I love your stuff." So
I will go around telling everybody, "Oh my God, you're Sarah Pinsker. I love your stuff." You just point me at them, and I'm there for you.
Okay. Well, that's why the name badges are handy. But anyway,
Name badges are lovely. Everyone should wear name badges all the time.
It's true.
It is completely true. And then that sort of little flick
And then I
of
could
the
look
eyes
down and do my own,
up, will just become a normal way of meeting someone.
Yeah.
And
not pervy at all.
And not pervy at all. Exactly my point.
That's right. Well, everybody has a rack, if by rack we mean name tag.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Yes. New definition.
New definition. So you didn't do any of the panels at all. And I kind of wanted to say, on panels, we should talk about panels, because some of them are awesome, and some of them are, oh dear God, let me give an excuse at the
Right.
back. You ought to have a friend call and say, okay, if I text you something, I need you to call me and tell me there's an emergency so that I can get out of this panel without offending anybody.
Yeah, but the mere fact of their calling you will offend somebody because you're in a panel and you
but
don't want your phone
it's
going off.
Strangers. I mean, what do I care what a stranger
Well,
thinks?
if we don't care what a stranger thinks, then why don't we just walk out of the panel?
Yeah.
Well, one of the best panels that I'm just kicking myself for missing was Ellen Kushner. She wrote the Ballad of...
Swords Point, didn't she?
She did write Swords Point, but
Yeah.
she also did
The Ballad of Thomas the Rhymer.
right.
Oh, yeah.
And she was
I've read that
talking
one.
about her influence of Ballad of Thomas the Rhymer, and then she sang it.
Yes.
Okay, and I missed that one. That was
Yes.
a last-minute addition to the program.
There
It
was
on
there
there.
was a debate.
True Thomas sat on Huntley Bank, that one. And he
That's
beheld the
almost
lady
certainly
gay.
the one.
Yeah.
No, there was a debate on Facebook beforehand whether or not she should sing, and the weight of
Oh, you
the
should
weight of the
always,
internet fell upon her.
Yeah.
You should always sing.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
So
that
she
was
did.
that
We
was
are
one
told.
that was one I was very sorry to have missed. But part of the problem with panels is, like you said, it can be hit or miss. Okay, and again, if there's like 2 or 3 of my friends on the panel, and that I know well enough that I'll know, okay, that will be worthwhile. They will make it worthwhile because I know that they're smart and whatever. But some of them that sound like they might be really cool may not be. So.
Yeah. And personally, I mean, I have retired from panels.
That's noble.
I think so. Because I have never liked talking impromptu. It's not my thing. This whole
podcast thing, yeah.
Not my thing.
But you're doing great.
I was bullied into it.
It's true. I'm such a bully.
I should not have said yes because, I get anxious.
However,
Hello?
I agree that you get anxious and really hate panels, but
Yes.
never give up readings.
I never give up readings.
Yeah.
I like reading.
He reads so well.
Because I have a text.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, occasionally there have been panels that I've thoroughly enjoyed. Like the time my late friend Ian Banks was a ghost of honour at FogCon, and they did a panel about him, and of course they had to have me on it. And I think my every contribution began with, so there was this time Ian and I were in the pub, and da-da-da, because that was the entirety of my relationship with him.
Well, I could see that. It's,
We hung out
you know,
in pubs, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the advantages of spending so much time in our pub, our restaurant, right there in the hotel we were staying in, is again, everyone was really nice, and the really nice staff there remembered us.
Yes.
Though
And they-
I think the hard part is that, when you have a small circle of, like, I barcon myself.
Yeah.
And if anybody comes and sits with me and hangs out and entertains with me, I buy them drinks. And that
Certainly.
seems like a good, worthy thing
Entirely
to do.
reasonable, yeah.
The problem is I think we all get terribly funny and clever, and it doesn't really get reported for posterity or anything. And so all the people who might have really enjoyed knowing what Chaz Brenchley is like, will miss that gem, that glory, that moment.
There is this thing that has been going on in conventions for decades now, where some conventions religiously record everything. And these days, of course, it's easier, and they can put it all up on the internet in moments, whereas 30 years ago there are simply tape recordings. And
It's
you
true.
Can,
I listened to Ursula Vernon's acceptance speech from over in
Did
was it
you?
Finland, and I heard it was so funny.
yeah,
Yes.
I'm sure. There are exceptions, there are examples. But for the most part, people post everything, and I wonder who the hell is ever going to listen to that.
Ooh, I'll tell you, that's where you get word of mouth. That's when you say, "Oh my gosh, Ellen Klages killing time telling the story of the Thanksgiving ham.
Oh God, the horrible ham.
The horrible ham."
Yeah, that's amazing.
That was a magnificent
Yes.
moment, and
Yes,
so
yes,
I
yes.
tell that, and now I'm going to have to find it and link to it because
Yes, you are.
Ellen, God, you were funny.
There is
She
a
was so
version
funny.
with pictures on the internet.
Fantastic, yeah.
Yeah, the actual ham is terrifying to behold.
Well, the thing, too, about if you know that Ellen Klages is going to be on the panel, or if you know that Jeff Ryman is going to be on the panel, oh, dear God, or Shannon McGuire, oh, dear God, go to the panel. Okay, because those people by themselves can carry on the panel, and when they're with others to riff off of, or if there's two like them together, oh dear God, that's the panel to be at.
Or really funny panels like Carrie Vaughn and this other guy who had a panel, and it was werewolves. It was simply called Werewolves or Vampires, and it was up at the SteamCon up in Seattle.
Yeah.
And halfway
Who's the
through
other
it, somebody
guy?
said, really what this boils down to is bestiality or necrophilia, which then we realized that the entire discussion was over, and brilliantly thereby, because those into bestiality were never going to convince people that necrophilia was the way to go, and vice versa.
And vice versa,
So, yeah.
Half of them weren't going to admit their fetish to begin with.
No. But then it opened up different levels of discussion, because now that we'd established that most important thing,
Yes.
we could discuss, was one the common man, was Jekyll and Hyde really was somewhat of a werewolf story in his own way. It was uncontrollably
It's
letting the wild
completely a
souls.
werewolf story.
Well, it is the trope of a werewolf.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
the uncontrollably
Yes.
turning into a beast.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure there was
It's a weird
a
something.
generic werewolf notion before that.
It was not a were-hedgehog. Well, there was in old shamanism.
Yeah,
there
yeah,
was
no,
old,
no.
you
There
know,
were the legends that he may have been working from to write Jekyll and Hyde, and those have been absorbed into the culture since. But
But in literature,
in literature, absolutely, I do not know of a previous example of what is obviously a werewolf story.
I don't know. I would argue that way back to a certain point, you once had lots of gods turned into animals all the time, and
Certainly,
Leda
but,
and the swan,
but
and it
those,
was,
those are not
and it wasn't
werewolf
the
stories.
and it wasn't the same as the losing yourself in the bestial,
Yeah.
horrible animal nature. And did
Just
that
for
happen
a couple
because
of days.
Hobbes' Leviathan, or do we blame a change, or?
Yeah.
Okay, we solved that one.
Okay,
blame you.
right. Well, there we go. So,
Well done.
okay.
Come here for solutions to your panel problems.
But I know for many people, there's probably a lot of people that may have never been to a convention or a con, and
Many.
I don't feel like we should talk them out of going, because I think
Hell
they're
no,
magnificent.
because it's fun.
Yeah.
It's
So one of the things, so we're talking about WorldCon, which is like the biggest con.
Yes, it
okay.
is. 6,000 people,
Yeah.
even in
Oh,
Ireland.
that's not as big as Dragon Con, which
No,
is
no, no.
30,000.
But for the-
Dragon
and
Con is
Carly
not a
Literary Con.
convention in the classical
For
sense.
literature.
For literature.
And no, for fans.
Okay, yeah.
Dragon Con is a thing to itself and basically commercialised.
It's a Comic-Con of
Comic Cons.
Yeah.
The thing about what I mean when I'm talking about conventions is that these are a product of fandom. They come out of the fan experience. They are managed and run by fans for fans, and we the professionals are we're an attractive margin, but it's not what people go for.
I don't know. I have occasionally looked at them and said, those are names that I would be interested. I'm going to go, as opposed to meh.
Yeah,
No,
okay.
I'm not.
But yes,
the
come on,
template for the convention is you have these writers or personalities of whatever type who are famous that you want to go see. So even if it's a fan convention, you still have to have those people, else it's not a convention, right?
But also, you're going with friends. Okay, it's been a long time since I've just gone by myself to a convention when I was younger. You're going with, actually, I don't think I've ever gone by myself. You're going with friends. This becomes, it's not a, like reading a book by yourself. It's an experience, an experiential thing, and you build an experience because the audience will have questions. There will, sometimes some of the best part of the panels come from the audience, but it's a group thing. And you're talking about BarCon, and we're talking about being in the bar.
Yeah.
So the first convention I went to in England was by happenstance. I was Carrie Sperring and I were going to Milford, and she was going to drop Chaz off at a convention in Nottingham. And I said, Nottingham? I've been to Sherwood Forest, but I haven't been to the castle. Let's go there. And so it was, it was British Fantasy Con or something, but I was clueless.
What do you
about
mean,
that.
or something? That's exactly what it was.
Okay, but the convention, and I was like, okay, we're staying across the street from the hotel because we just needed to crash for the night. But we walked across the street to the hotel where the convention was, and the convention was going on in the bar. English conventions are bar cons.
Yep.
I met like half the, British writers, working, just hanging out in the bar.
Yeah. I mean, that is absolutely the notion of a convention that I grew up with. And it is, as I repeat, it is basically fan-driven. People go there. I mean, okay, the guests of honour will attract some people who would not have come otherwise, but that is a small percentage of the people who will go because it's a con, and because that way they will see all their friends in fandom. It's a social endeavour. It is
Plus dealer's room.
plus the dealer's room helps again,
I mean,
but people would go regardless.
Yeah.
The first convention I ever went to had no dealer's room and no bar. And people went regardless. It was in a university campus, and there were just no facilities for anything. But we were there.
The first convention I went to was in the public library in Pocatello, Idaho, and so no bar,
Yep.
No dealer's room
Yep.
because they had all the books right there for free. And it was there because I talked people into it, and we had like
You made it happen.
yeah, that's
You
me.
don't buy the books because you want to read them. You buy the books because you want to have them.
True, good point. Well, I've learned that. I used to, I had the library right there, but I wanted to get like-minded people in town. I wanted to meet them. We had a dungeon. I developed a Dungeons and Dragons tournament that went really, really well. Things like that. But it was, again, I wanted to get like-minded people together. We didn't have a guest of honor. Okay, it was entirely fan convention, and it was lovely when we had like 2 or 3 of those.
Well, there's things like Tacticon out in Denver where all about board gaming and miniature gaming.
Sure.
And so it literally
Yeah.
was going in and trying, and it was a place, honestly, for some of the vendors in that case to come out and say, hey, I've made a new game. You're going to, we've test played amongst ourselves. We had Dave Speakman on last week on the topic
Yes, we
of new
did.
games they developed, but new games, coming out, and
Yeah.
do you want to try these? And I, of course, always bought games out of it. And then one of the first places that I ever met writers was at Once Upon a Con, which was a LARPing convention of all things for
You might have to explain LARPing to our
LARPing,
ignorance.
live action role playing group. So it was International Fantasy Gaming Society, referred to, and based on the books of Dream Park by Larry Niven and Stephen Barnes.
Okay.
And so there were people who decided they were going to do foam sword, ear and tail, whatever you wanted to do, LARPing of running all over the mountains and hitting people with swords.
What
and
is
there was
ear
a
and
convention. Ear and tail, costumes. Put on your costumes. You're an elf, you're an orc, you're a whatever.
So it's
So there's a great picture, of me with bat wings and a scorpion tail and a
Also,
lot
the
of makeup.
trophy, if you kill it, you get both ears and the tail.
It's true. It's a trophy hunting thing. But that was where I actually, for the first time, met Steve Bruce. And
Right.
I was where I met Jim Butcher. That was where I met Larry Niven. And,
I did not know these people did that thing.
well, there you go. I mean, see,
They didn't
I
do
can,
it.
I
They
can say
invented it. We did it.
Stephen Bruce has worn my clothes. He may not remember it, but there was a midnight
And
game.
that's not creepy at all.
Well, I had a friend who did that with Mile High Con as well, and she always worked on the art area.
Yeah.
And so the art is another reason that people go, the opportunity to see the art and purchase art and be part of art.
Yes.
So there can be a lot of things.
There
driving-
are a lot of things. I mean, there are panels. There is the art show. There is the dealer's room. All of these things, but they are adjacent to the fact that most people who go to conventions go to see other people who go to conventions. There is this whole thing about relationships, friendships. I mean, I have been friends with numerous British people for 30 years because we meet at conventions. We never meet outside conventions. I mean, fortunately, these days we have the internet, which keeps us in touch and develops those friendships outside in physical meeting. But we didn't used to have that.
Arguably.
Yeah. And I swear, this is what conventions are all about,
Yeah.
is maintaining the social relationships and seeing people who you only ever see. I mean, I have Fran Dowd, John Dowd. These are people I have known for 30 years. And apart from the fact that John came to dinner at our house because he was in the area last year, we've never met outside conventions. And I love that.
Well, and also, I mean, things that we have today that, you know, we've quickly taken or we've quickly become accustomed to, being able to send email, looking on Facebook, doing all this stuff. Used to be people typing on whatever that paper is called that you type it and then you can make dittos out of it.
Carbon paper.
Carbon paper. Thank you. See that from the
Yeah.
ancient days. But things people have always done the
Yes.
equivalent. They've always
Yes.
done keeping in touch with other fans.
My first contact with fandom, because like I was not a fan in the sense of being in fandom. I was a fan in the sense that I just read science fiction novels. I had no idea that fandom existed until I encountered it when I was 19.
I have to say this was one that I came to later because
Right.
they had fan guests of honor. For the last 10 years, I have wondered what the heck it was.
Right.
Because I didn't know.
Yeah,
because I
sure.
had missed fanzines
Yeah.
and letter zines
Right.
and all of the
Da-da-da.
other
Yeah.
all of the other zines that Dave told us about before.
Yeah.
Like, wow, that's where they come from. Oh, they're people who do that and
Yes.
actually send out the physical letters and newsletters and such.
My first encounter with fandom was the BSFA, British Science Fiction Association, which was, it was a fan-run organisation, and they sent out a newsletter from Reading, and I lived in Oxford, and they needed people.
That's Reading, England, not
Reading,
Reading,
England.
California.
Yes,
in
yes,
case
yes.
Anybody was listening.
Also Oxford, England, which is actually quite close to Reading, England.
Right.
And they needed people to go and help them collate and envelope the newsletter. So every month I would take a train down to Reading, and we would spend an evening walking around a table, assembling pieces of paper and stapling them together and putting them in envelopes, and it was lovely. And I got to spend the evening talking to people who did what I did, who read books that I read.
Yeah, there's part of me that's a little mournful that I missed that part of it, that
I'm
I
sorry.
didn't know it really existed
Yeah.
in terms of just, there's newsletters. Because the SCA, I was a chronicler for a local newsletter, so, this is what's happening in our local shire going up. And
Yeah.
I kind of knew they existed for other things, but the idea that you could just get on a random newsletter was I'd never heard of it. And so I would have enthusiastically been much more a part of such things.
Well, I grew up in Pocatello, Idaho, which is
As you keep saying.
the middle of nowhere.
We're sorry.
The first convention I went to was SaltCon in Salt Lake City.
Okay.
Which is actually kind of cool. I met George Takei, who
Okay, that is actually quite cool.
He's my
Yeah.
hero.
And that is continually cool,
Yeah.
There are some things that could have been cool then, but would no longer be cool now. But that is freaking awesome.
Well, I also
Better
met
finish.
I
Never,
also met Orson Scott Card.
which is less cool these days.
Well, the thing is, that was back when
Yeah.
he was a real person.
Yeah.
Okay, this is before he had the disabled child. He was a real person, and he was funny and interesting. Robert Heinlein was there, but I didn't actually get to meet him. But he was there, and Jerry Pornell, who when I encountered him earlier in the convention was friendly and nice and sweet, and I encountered him later in the convention, and he was a jerk. And it turns out, guess when he started drinking during the day. So anyway,
Okay.
but so I was able to do that. I went to SaltCons twice. And they had things like a D&D tournament, and they had they had panels and stuff. But I really didn't know what I was doing. I was there with my best friend. Oh, by the way, we came home from that. And my best friend. And it turns out that DeForest Kelly's aunt and uncle lived in Pocatello, Idaho, and he was there visiting
Chaz,
them.
I take it back. Cut her off.
Never.
He was there visiting them.
Or menacing
and my
web
best
spider.
my best friend's mother called them up and said, "Do you mind if Karen and Tracy come by and meet DeForest Kelly?" So I met him in a trailer park, and he seemed very, very tall and magnificent and was so kind and so sweet. So I met George Takei and DeForest Kelly in the middle, in my middle of nowhere life, just around. Anyway, sorry, I did go off. rails. I apologize.
No, it's beautiful, and that's what I mean by saying, to bring it back around. Yeah, I think it does sometimes matter who's there to show up, because if it was just a con of us sitting around in a bar, well, there's a few of us diehard barflies that would go, but it might not be. Somewhere somebody has to say, "Oh, Chaz Brenchley's going to be there."
Yeah,
I'll go then.
I don't think you're right, Jeannie. I love you, but I don't think you're right.
I'm comfy with that.
Okay. I think that, conventions happen, and it helps, of course, that we can sign up big names just to come. That's the other lovely thing about it, is that nobody gets paid for this. It's not like Dragon Con or Comic Con.
That's true.
The guests of honor won't have to pay for their airfare or their hotel. That'll be covered. But apart from that, everybody pays to be. I have never been comped to a convention. I'm just pointing out, I have never been a guest of honor at a convention. What are you thinking of, people?
Yes.
There was a horror con that I used to go to, and you should have entirely been and done the midnight reading at horror con.
Absolutely.
Let me tell you, that was, and maybe that's the thing that I liked about the different cons, is finding the soul of that particular convention.
Yes.
And
Right.
at horror con, it was, you get your pillow and your blankie and you put your jammies on and you go down and you get read a bedtime story.
Jane
I
Nolan
did-
used to do that. She used to.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it'd be more Sherry Tepper for me, or
No.
Chaz. Or,
I did a midnight reading at a convention in the UK with Ramsey Campbell.
right.
Me and Ramsey.
Yeah.
That was freaking awesome.
Oh yeah.
And-
Everybody was shaking when they left.
And I'll need links to that story too.
Okay.
We're going to put links to all the interesting things we mentioned on this website, which is www.writersdrinkingcoffee.com. You can also find us on Facebook or Twitter. We answer email. Please, we beg of you, come email us so that we can have an episode of just reading our mail sometime. You've been listening to Writers Drinking Coffee, a labor of love and enthusiasm put together by the hosts. Our main web support magic is brought to you by Deirdre McGaffey-Schween, and our sound engineer and backup web spider is David Welsh. Our intro music is Pretty Maid Milking a Cow, and our exit music is Breakfast with a Morning Person, both by Michael Ingberg. You can hear more from Michael Ingberg on manyhatsmusic.com. Our podcast sponsor is Jackal Designs, enabling you to buy all the cool Writers Drinking Coffee swag you possibly want.